Hey guys, welcome back to Player Level 4, a competitive podcast where we hopefully take your game to the next level. We've got some real exciting stuff to go over this week. We had the Forge Watch Invitational, just happened last weekend. Got a lot of stuff to go from there, top decks, how we think it went, the future of organized play. Got a AMA that John Fiorillo put up on Reddit, going to talk about some of the things there, and always our pack, your pick. So first, welcome back, Radrian. Nice to see you again. What have you been up to besides being a baller in the Invitational?
Well, aside from getting top 16 in the Invitational, I did just yesterday put out a new article, my Invitational tournament overview, just what my thoughts going into the tournament and coming out of the tournament. I've been told it's actually a pretty good read, and so I'm happy that it's gotten the response that it has. Otherwise, I've been spending a lot of time in the tournament queues when I'm not working, and yeah, a lot of fun. Just trying out different decks, not really playing the same thing over and over again. I think right now I'm playing NT removal with Fervent Assaults, because putting a Predator in the middle and then putting a Fervent Assault on it because people are putting their creatures in the outside lanes is so much fun.
All right, well, also with us, your favorite co-host, Fox. Fox, what have you been up to lately?
Well, I've been up to a bit of streaming. I've been moving between Christmas break and, being back in school. I've just been drafting a whole lot and doing fairly well, getting very close to my goals for set 1. So I'm very happy.
Getting 2 Zymus in the span of 5 minutes.
Yeah, that felt pretty good. Especially since those were the 2 I needed. But yeah, I've just been having a great time playing. I think it's a really good measure of how good Soulforge is that I can't stop playing. So, I'd say that's a win-win for me.
All right. Well, I heard we have another special guest this week. You want to tell us about him?
Well, alrighty. This week we have a new community member. Well, not new. He's been around for a while, but he's been posting on the forums, and we haven't really had much of a chance to talk to him. This week we have Zan or Bearsman. Zan, why don't you tell us about yourself?
How's it going, guys? I have been around for a little while. Just sort of had a little more time lately. I'm actually a school teacher, so when school season gets, when classes get going, I actually have a little bit more time, not less. It's kind of weird to post during my planning period or whatever, and it's given me some opportunities to kick around some fun decks, and I've started, building some really crazy things. And that's sort of what I've been focusing on, is building fun decks that especially appeal to players who might have free accounts or haven't invested yet, even though I recommend that they do so, and just kicking those around with people, trying to improve my game, drafting a little bit, and just generally enjoying Soulforge.
I heard you've been putting some articles up on the forums. You want to give us some highlights on that? We'll also put some links down below for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually working on my 5th article right now. I've sort of taken it upon myself because I enjoy such crazy brews. I love to brew decks. I've taken it upon myself to make these installments, these episodes of what I like to call Zan's Crazy Deck Shop. And the first one was kind of a walls deck that tried to beat you by stalling the game into Pyre. It was really a Pyre song deck that just seemed like fun. The second
That's
one
awesome.
The second one was going a completely different direction and trying to establish small individual, like single threats, either a Zix or a Zymus or something like that, and playing Pump around it. So I guess not Zymus, but a Zix or, a Cass or something that you could then ridiculously pump, and if you had to, move it with Fervent Assault, stuff like that. It was great. The third deck, I completely blame Rook for. If you know Rook Almighty, or not Rook Almighty, but Rook Unlimited or whatever, and it's called Frozen Pizza, and it is probably the worst deck I've ever built in Soulforge, and that is including the decks I built with my starters when I started, because it was basically a challenge. You have to use Frozen Solid, which is a card I wish I could love.
Oh, no!
In a deck. And I found that despite how bad that card is, it works out so well with Poison. Because you give them Defender,
God!
and then you poison it, and the poison ticks once, and it dies.
I think you just graduated Radron from a Tier 1 player to a Tier 4 player, so I appreciate that so much.
we have broken Radron.
Yeah. So frozen solid plus poison equals anything dies, as long as the frozen solid is the right level. And that's the problem with the deck. You have to play frozen solid every time, or it doesn't work. So to do that, you have to get crazy amounts of card advantage. So I started playing Taliesin and Echo Wisp and things like that. And it sort of built itself, but it didn't work. It just didn't work because it relied so heavily on frozen solid.
It built itself, but what it was trying to be was an outhouse.
Right. Exactly.
I'll take a family size.
The most recent deck, the timing was actually perfect because I had just gotten a couple copies of Drix, and then it went on sale that weekend. So I was building and putting together this article because I try and release them every Saturday. So there's another one coming tomorrow. It's about a deck Kit gave me this brilliant idea for, and we've been testing and testing and testing. And so that one's coming tomorrow. But the last one was called Drix Are On Me, a pun on drinks are on me, because I wanted to get away from all the Skrillex jokes. And it was based on Drix and Gox, and it was a much more competitive list. And it actually has been testing pretty well, too. But the new one is going to be even more fun, and it's a secret to everybody, is what the title is going to be. Which I hope you get the Zelda reference.
So I have to ask, what was your faction pair for this Drix Are On Me?
Drix Are On Me? I played with a couple of them. I started out with Utera, thinking if you pair Metamines and Drix with Breakthrough, then things die. But then Kit convinced me that instead of just trying to go over top of them, why don't you remove the things in the way in the first place? So it slid into a Necrium Splash with the Aloyan. And that actually, I think, is a more competitive version of the deck, and that's the way I wrote the article. I said, this is the deck I had first, but then I started testing and testing and testing, and this deck I think is better, and it's it could be a competitive top-tier deck. And now I finally, over the last week, I opened my third Drix and my second and third Gox, so I can build it. Yeah, it was. I've had a really good week drafting this week. I've had a very good week drafting this week. A lot of 3-0s, which I've had some help with, but, it's fun.
Cough.
Well done. Kit lost all my tickets drafting, so I kind of gave up on drafting.
Yeah.
That's okay. I gave it to Zan, so.
I've got another article coming that I've got the deck planned tomorrow for the Crazy Deck Shop, but I've got a more serious article that I've been writing about, drafting and tickets, and a lot of people have been saying that the ticket bleed is really high, and I've actually been compiling this huge spreadsheet at this point. I've been going since I basically started playing SoulForge, and I've got 150 data points now because I've been going for that long. Yeah, and I've been tracking all the rewards that I get. I've been tracking how much silver, all of that, and so I've got some solid numbers that I can use to say, here's what the perception is, and here's what the reality is, and this is. You can make the conclusion for yourself, but here's what I'm seeing, and I don't think the bleed is actually as bad as people say it is. Because, across my two accounts, I have two. One completely free, and that's my main account, and one that's not. And the number is actually, quite manageable. If you're aiming for the goal, which people seem to think is one draft a week, all you have to do is win, 2-1. Go 2-1 in draft, and you can do that. That's manageable.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see that article and copy-paste it in pretty much every thread on the forums, Cough. But that said, we had some other exciting stuff that isn't coming in the future, happened in the past. The first ever Invitational, SoulForge's very own version of a Pro Tour. Ran by Forge Watch, we collected a whole bunch of top 8 finishes, some top 16s for the last couple seeds, and a whole bunch of first place finishes, and managed to compile them into a giant 64-person tournament spread out over 2 weekends, and had a lot of really cool things. We've got the top 8 decks linked down below for you, but ultimately what we saw was 6 decks that featured Patriarch, one a Tarsus Deathweaver deck, and one is an NT removal Predator deck. The NT removal Predator deck took first. What do you guys think of that deck? That was Blue Dex's deck he took first with. What do you guys think?
I was surprised to see that the old guard, essentially the NT removal deck, still had it in it to keep pace with the new guard, which seems to be that Werewood Patriarch, Ferocious Roar, get everything huge across the board and spread and smash deck. I thought that was a very interesting development.
Blue Dex's deck was actually situated pretty well. I think that I thought that a lot of people would go into the tournament with NT, and I know that everybody had practiced against it, but the deck still had the tools to win, especially when in some cases, like we're having all these gargoyles that we're flooding the board with bots, pumping them with Patriarch, but one of the big keys to that was the Arcflight Squadron, and having as much removal as the NT deck does, you can take out a lot of it's able to take out a lot of these key cards that would actually like really get the game out of control, and Predator gets really big early, and then in like the level 2, then you get Devourer to get really big, and these Weirwood Patriarch decks are not running a lot of removal, so the fact that even though people were like heavily tested against this, I think that the deck is actually still solid, and in fact, it's what I'm getting 3-0s right now in Constructed. Not that exact list. I'm playing Fervent Assault because I like to be able to access the outside lanes when my Predator's in the middle. But the deck had just as much chance of anything else winning the tournament, and so I think, and Blue Decks obviously played very well. So yeah, it winning is not surprising, and congrats to Blue Decks for being able to fight through the hate.
Yeah, something I noticed as well is like the Werewood Patriarch decks, especially the ones that were played in the tournaments like Grobots, were very focused on snowballing. They wanted to get on the board early, pump everything up, and make it so you couldn't deal with anything. But because the NT removal deck was playing so much removal, they were able to always stop that from ever happening. But the thing is, it was very critical to know which cards you had to worry about and which ones you didn't. And so it became very skill intensive. And so we're seeing, what I've seen recently is a lot of people playing NT removal in the constructed queues. And some people are saying, well, how did he win this? What's working on this? It's just a very it's a difficult matchup. You have to know what to kill, when to kill it, when to pump your Predator, when to pump a Grimgaunt. You have to know what's going on, but if you do, you should be winning the majority of the time.
So my take on the deck is that Thundersword decks don't have an answer to out-of-control Grimgaunt, especially in multiple. Like, they don't want to be running Botanimate because most of them realized they were going to be playing against other Patriarch decks, and playing Botanimate against a Patriarch deck isn't exactly plus EV. So they didn't really have effective answers for the Predator decks. Also, Botanimating a Predator in a Predator deck feels really, really bad because suddenly they're still hitting you for 3 while taking out all of your stuff. You don't really get to ever snowball, and they're just still sitting there hitting you for free all the time. So I think that is ultimately what ran in favor for Blue Dex's deck. It's still obviously a very skill-intensive matchup, but I think that, if you're looking at 2 equally skilled players playing against each other, one playing UA, one playing NT, I feel like there's a slight favoritism towards the NT simply because of that. That said, there were a couple other decks. Fox, why don't you take us into the second place deck?
Yeah, our second place was taken by a player known as Xtoff. He was playing a deck that most of us refer to as Leaf Weaver, which focuses on a Leafkin Progenitor and Tarsus Deathweaver engine. So what do you guys think about that deck?
I guess I'll jump in and go first again. Hope I'm not stepping on toes. I felt like the combination of Tarsus Deathweaver and some of those cards that may seem obvious is just extremely potent. If you have that Leafkin Progenitor and the Tarsus, then that's a serious threat that must be immediately answered. And if it can't be, then you pretty much have established board control from the first player level. One of the strengths of that NT removal deck is I think if we looked at the combinations of cards, it had something like 12 different ways to remove a turn 1 Leafkin. And that was something that if you couldn't handle a turn 1 Leafkin, you were in trouble. Because as soon as he can become that turn 2 Leafkin, especially if he drops a Tarsus on turn 2, you're done. I also enjoyed seeing that he had only a couple copies of Zemus, and that's because, everybody was so sure that he was the card to beat before, and that he's only running 2, I think is an excellent testament to the way that at least the perceived meta has shifted already, and I love that.
I actually played against Xtov. He was the guy that actually knocked me out of the tournament, and I was looking at his list and I was watching him play, and I think my biggest problem with his list was that all of his power seemed to be wrapped up in Leafkin Progenitor. And in fact, the game he beat me, he started his turn 1 with 2 Leafkin Progenitors to my 1 Leafkin Progenitor. And it was actually a really good game. It was a very close game. I knew what I needed to do to beat these early Leafkin Progenitors, despite the fact I wasn't running any removal whatsoever. The very close game where I had regained board control. I had played the last creatures that I had needed to really regain board control. I had something like a 30-20. I'm not even kidding. It was like a 30-20 level 2 Devourer that he could not deal with because he never played a single Dreadbolt. And of course his Phytobombs were terrible because I was also running Tarsus. He beat me with a well-timed level 3 Roar that got me to -6 on the turn that I had regained board control and was just going to run away with the rest of the game. So really good game. I do have some problems with this list though, like Phytobomb. I do not like it in this metagame. When are you going to cast it? When is it actually going to be good? Aetherhounds is a card that I'm actually liking more and more, and I wish that I had played some Aetherhounds instead of the 3 Echoists, just because you have so many ways to pump them, and you get to place them. Grimgaunt Devourer, obviously really good. The Zemuses, I don't think actually, he might have played one against me, and it wasn't a problem. That was probably the game against him that I won. But the deck is solid, but I guess my biggest problem is that all of his power seems to wrap around this early Leafkin Progenitor, and any game that he didn't have that, it felt really weak. But he's obviously a fantastic player, and being able to get all the way to the finals, and I don't think it is surprising that he did lose that finals match to Blue decks, because this deck, once again, 12 ways to get rid of Tarsus Deathweaver, or I'm sorry, Leafkin, yeah, it was a hard matchup for Xtov, and I didn't see him coming off with the win in the end there.
So, interesting, thought on that. There was actually one point during one of the games that was streamed that he decided to discard a spell rather than play a Leafkin out into a lane, simply because he didn't want it to be food for a Grimgaunt Predator. That said, I think that we already discussed the matchup with it, at least its progression through the top 8, so I just want to talk about the fact that in a meta, when the patch launched, everybody was like, oh, need to nerf Tarsus Deathweaver, this is the most powerful card, how are we ever going to beat it? And people were struggling to beat this card, simply because Tarsus Deathweaver was a rare, everybody had access to it, the cards it had synergy with, most people already had at least 1 or 2 of the legendaries, at least if you've been playing since Set 1 went live, and if you didn't, a lot of rares and heroics and commons synergize really well with it. So there were a lot of people trying to beat it, and then I think that once Patriarch came around, people stopped taking this deck seriously, and as a result, like, Justicars weren't really played in the tournament, and when they were, people weren't really equipped to deal with Tarsus Deathweaver because they're so used to having to fight Patriarch. I know that there are some people, like Holy Llamas, for instance, who debated even cutting their Justicars altogether from their list before the tournament. And, I mean, if you didn't know, Holy Llamas hit third place in the tournament playing a UA list, and he almost took it out. So I think that people just stopped taking the deck seriously. It was the only one in the tournament. It went and got second. I feel like if more people played this deck, it would have been more successful in the tournament. And I think Christoph obviously did really well because he's a solid player. But I would not have... I imagine that any of the other top 8 players that played a Tarsus Deathweaver deck could have also hit top 8 with a Tarsus Deathweaver deck.
Except for me, because I obviously didn't get top 8 with my Tarsus Deathweaver, with my Tarsus deck.
Yeah, I was referring to good players.
Okay. Oh, good. Good. I would not want to confuse anybody into thinking that I was a good player.
Yeah. No. That you are a good player. You definitely were, back when Aloy and Tempe's spells was
back when I was the only person playing with Shapers. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, a pioneer.
Alrighty. Well, I just kind of have to comment that I think Xtoph's deck was very, very well positioned in that particular metagame for the Invitational. And had I realized how many people, were going to be cutting Justicars down to like 2, sometimes even 1 copy in their deck lists, as I was a last minute sub in for somebody who had some things come up and he needed to not be able to play, and they wanted to get a match in anyways. I actually would have registered Life Bomb had I known, but instead I registered a subpar version of UA because I was missing Arc Flights. But that said, Werewood Patriarch seems to be the rising star right now, and a lot of people have been wondering, is he too strong? How do we beat Werewood Patriarch? So, how do you guys think you can really stop Patriarch decks from getting off the ground? How do you beat Patriarch when you play against it?
Well, I think one of the strengths of the Patriarch is that it allows you to play cards that have strong effects but have been balanced with weaker bodies, and then you're buffing those bodies up so that you have both a strong effect and a strong body. So what you have to think about is those typically also aren't susceptible to the same kind of removal spells that would have, been the powerful removal earlier. Dreadbolt has substantially devalued, but Cull the Weak, has substantially increased in value. And I think it's a new kind of challenge. I think Blightwalker has become an actual, a good spell now, a good creature, because he's able to handle some of these things even with his pathetically small 1 attack at level 1. He's still strong. I think it requires different kinds of deck building attitudes and approaches. I also think that the cards that were really strong before, like Epidemic, not being as strong has meant that you have to think about, okay, what else can I do? How else can I contain, for example, these spread and smash type of decks? And if you don't have a plan for that, then your deck's just not going to succeed. And that's something that every deck builder has to consider. I don't know that I have the answers. I'm relying on other people who seem to be doing much better. I just build things. Other people play them.
Yeah, Weirwood Patriarch is it's difficult because once again it entirely revolves around what you are playing. So the big thing with Weirwood Patriarch is while you want to build around it, you can't only build around it. You need to have a plan B because you're not going to draw that Weirwood Patriarch every other turn. Despite the fact you want to, it's not going to happen, and you're going to. Yeah, no, your opponents always seem to. It's like every other turn they get that Patriarch and you just lose. Yes, that does happen. If you get those draws where you're just every other turn play a Patriarch. Play a Patriarch. They will snowball, and you are going to lose. But that's variance. That the way that you okay. Let's take a UA mirror match. Generally, the game is decided on who can flood the board first. And so, one of the big things that if you're going to do, like, walk into a mirror like that, don't block. Don't block. That's a huge part of it. Also, get your opponent to start blocking you, because at that point now they get to walk into your Bright Steel Sentinels. Because that's the other thing, is playing around the cards that are going to wreck you. Bright Steel Sentinel. They have robots? Don't block the robots. He's going to play that Bright Steel Sentinel, wreck your board, now you're screwed. So you have to know what you're playing against. You have to play around the cards that are going to cause you problems. Yes, they're going to pump their things with Weirwood Patriarch. It's not going to matter if you have more creatures than them and you have a bigger board and they have to start blocking first. Now, NT is a little different. Basically, you're just trying to get one big threat that they have to deal with 2 cards. And you're just getting in damage, you're racing them, you're not letting them really get their gameplay going, which is to not block things, because you're constantly moving, removing, getting in for damage, and they're like, okay, well, at some point it's going to get too big for them to deal with, and then you've already snowballed out of control, and they're just going to lose. Beating Weirwood Patriarch isn't just about knowing that if they draw them, their things are going to be big. It's about making sure that you have the superior board position at any given time, so that even if that Weirwood Patriarch does come down, you're just taking damage and not losing creatures.
I definitely agree with that. Having tested with both Tiny Grimes and Holy Llamas incredibly heavily for the top 8, the number one thing that I found is not blocking creatures that you weren't killing immediately was always the correct choice. In fact, this is, in the mirror match of UA, going first is always better than going second. Always,
yes,
100% of the time.
Absolutely.
UA mirror match, going first is better. Doesn't matter if your opponent levels more cards. The game's over before player level 3. I don't care if my opponent has one more leveled card. Getting those 3 lanes covered before my opponent can, just absolutely, utterly mind-blowingly crucial. The other thing is, when you're playing the UA mirror match, specifically, Rajan was talking about Brightsteel Gargoyle. I mean, you have Patriarch, Brightsteel Gargoyle, and Ferocious Roar to always be a blowout when your opponent blocks your defensive creature. If you go first, you have 3 lanes covered, you immediately gain the benefit of being able to blow out whatever they block with. You are essentially killing something for free and being ahead on board, because whatever card you played was just impacting your entire board. Whether it was a Sentinel, you have another body on the board, you save the health on some of your creatures, you killed one of their creatures. Ferocious Roar, suddenly your cards can't be traded across 2 combats. Suddenly they need 3 combats to kill them, and theirs are dead by that time. So you get to keep building your board. And again, not blocking, absolutely the absolute key part of those mirror matches. I do definitely agree with what Zan said. Blightwalker is a really strong card against the deck. I expect to see people transition away from UA into UN if this stays popular, and play cards like Succubus and cards like Blightwalker. I personally like Darkheart Wanderer when you're playing Ferocious Roar and Patriarch, because a 5/10 just for no reason is really powerful. And then just naturally playing a Ferocious Roar, making a 7/12 Regenerator, for again, not ever dedicating a card to that Darkheart Wanderer, making it a 7/12 Regenerate 1. That kills a Thundersword 1 without even trying. It just laughs at it. And still left over and hard to kill. So I generally like that card. But Succubus, being able to lower your Patriarch or one of your buffed cards into range to get hit by another Patriarch, really powerful. But also being able to lower their cards so you can trade with them profitably. If you notice that the health of a Patriarch is exactly 3 health higher than its power, suddenly when your opponent is dropping Patriarchs to block yours, you're getting profitable trades on them because you're lowering their health by 3. It's no longer a back and forth 2 combats. It's immediately you're able to take them out. That said, I need you guys to not take me seriously for a second, because I have noticed a conspiracy.
Oh dear.
Stoneblade.
I am so curious.
Stoneblade is located in California, near Hollywood. Wirewood is also the same amount of letters, ending in wood. Hollywood promotes playing skinny creatures, aka models.
Oh my gosh.
And gives them lots of things, pumps up their life. I think Stoneblade is promoting anorexia and is preventing me from playing Utera and dropping fatties, and I won't have it. I want to play fatties, damn it.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So
It likes
I gotta
big
give
butts, and he cannot lie.
Well, I mean, at least I get to play big butts. I mean, I got Thundersore, but I mean, anorexia, man. We gotta stop it. Stoneblade, I don't approve.
Wow. Well, I have to say that I myself, I am proud that Werewood Patriarch has become a rising star, because Werewood Patriarch is my preview baby. I got to preview it, and I'm so happy that it's doing well. But that said, I think it is a bit overplayed right now. The biggest thing is just to keep them... You either flood the board first and go bigger than them, or you keep them from ever getting on the board. And I think those are the two key things to keep in mind when you're playing against Patriarch decks. It is a very good card. But if you can keep them from, say, getting an Arc Flight Squadron off, say they play an Arc Flight Squadron on turn 1, and you Gemhide Basher right into it, suddenly that strong effect that isn't there, they don't have the body to pump, they have to play more things, it's much harder for them to snowball. So I just think that, there are ways to beat it. You just need to play correctly. And some people might not like that statement, but it's really how it is. It's a card game. There's strategy involved. Play the right way around specific cards, and you'll be rewarded.
And hopefully able to play fatties. But in seriousness, I have to say that I think Patriarch is actually good for the meta, because this is the first time where I felt in a long time playing Soulforge that you can take a Tier 2 deck into the queues and actually be able to play your Tier 2 deck. Back in the rules, the days of Shapers, like, you couldn't play gimmicky cards. You couldn't play, something like Soul Drinker. Now I feel like in a meta like this, you can play Soul Drinker and Gloom Reaper Witch, and while those decks aren't going to be winning more than Tier 1 decks, you at least can try your game plan once in a while. You can have fun playing your decks, and I think that is... I think it's good. I think that it's good that we have multiple decks that made it to the top 8. I think it's good that, it wasn't just a Loyan Utera Patriarch, and I think it's really good that, now we're seeing a surge of Drix decks. I got demolished by a cast deck the other day. There's people trying to build around Woebringer. There's people playing a whole bunch of different decks that, in a meta that's control heavy like Shapers was before, you didn't really get to play your game plan, but here, while you might not win, you'll at least get to play your cards and have your cards sit on the board and be able to at least activate. You're going to at least be able to activate your Keeper of the Damned, or your Scourge Flame Sorcerer, or your Synapsis Oracle. Maybe only once, but you'll get to do it before dying.
And that's huge. That's actually huge, because we're back to a metagame where everybody is playing 2 cards a turn again. I know there's Arc Flight shenanigans, but for the most part, we are in a metagame where people are actually playing 2 cards a turn again. There's no Shaper engine. There's very rarely Infinite Zemuses wrecking in player levels 3 and 4. We still do get like Phoenixes and stuff, but
rest in peace, Gitfinity.
Exactly. But yeah, because we are back to playing 2 cards a turn again, suddenly we can use cards with Activate. Like, wow. There's a very wide playable belt now in cards. Like, there's not really the either you play Shapers or you play something that is big enough and fast enough to beat Shapers. We have this wide belt that has been bound together by the existence of Weirwood Patriarch, and that's really cool.
And 1 point, for those of you who enjoy playing multiple cards in a turn, look for my article tomorrow.
Woo!
Where he will teach you how to play 3 cards in 1 turn.
Maybe more if you get multiple Soul Harvests.
Whoa.
So going into not minus EV, we have John Fiorillo's AMA that he did on Reddit just a couple days ago. Some real exciting stuff. He answered a lot of questions, was very honest. As always, not everybody is happy with all of his answers. I think that is something that, because we're still a relatively small community, you should be aware and realize that vocal minorities, or even just vocal people in general, are going to be much more apparent because, they're not drowned out, like in, say, a game like World of Warcraft, where, there might be someone who's upset about something, but there's like 900 people that are positive about the same thing. Whereas in Soulforge, someone's upset about something, there's a lot of room for them to be able to speak. Some of these things are really cool, some of them aren't. The one that I'm going to touch on first is the fact that John gave us a little teaser for Set 2, and that is the words Level 4. What do you guys think that means?
I'm going to jump on the Captain Obvious bandwagon and say that I think Level 4 is referring to creatures or spells that go up to the mythical and so far unseen Level 4. I'm hoping that what that also means is that perhaps the meta will slow down some so that we can enjoy player Level 4 and thus be able to see cards of Level 4, but I think it could mean a whole nother, another level, obviously. But I mean this in the more literal, like, if the cards go up to 4 now, 4 is better than 3, and I can't even imagine, like, I've seen monsters at level 3. I've seen 100, 101, Arborist. I've seen crazy Grimgaunt Predators and Devourers. I'm curious what a level 4 card would either be or do, and it's got my brain buzzing.
I just can't wait for the free publicity. We've been telling you how we were going to level up your game for, like, months now, and it came. I mean, we told you. We've been telling you all along. Player Level 4. It's going to be a thing. Free publicity. You heard it here first.
Kit, I was going to say that, too.
Yeah, you beat me to that. Good grief.
I know. That's why I had to go after Zan.
Oh my gosh. Well, aside from the free publicity, yes, 4th level opens up a lot of design space. And aside from just the idea of... I really do like the idea of the format slowing down. Like, maybe it's a hint that we'll be able to see player level 4. Because that doesn't happen very much anymore. Like, most of your games are done by turn 5 to 7 or 8. Sometimes 9, maybe 10 if you're lucky. I don't know. But, this does open up some cool design space. So, we're talking about, like, level 3 monsters. Well, what if we have a card that is better than average across all levels? At level 3 is this super ridiculous monster, but at level 4, it's like a 1/1. Like, so it's burnt out. Like, yeah, you have, like, this one shot of it just being amazing. If you don't win the game there, you're never going to see it again.
So we could name it Tournament Player and say that after he's had his moment of glory, he's burnt out?
Why would you talk
Oh, so we call it Rage River.
Yeah!
That's my card. It's Stoneblade. You're going to make my card now, right?
Well, I certainly hope not. That card would be unplayable.
If it has the words Ragerin on it, like the word Ragerin...
If it has the words Ragerin on it, I will break it. I will find a way.
He will find a way, and then he will burn himself out on the way.
Yes. Yes, I will.
I think they should do it subtly, like have certain letters capitalized and they end up spelling Ragerin, and that be the only hint.
That would be sweet. Well, something else that I was thinking of that they could possibly do with level 4, to go slightly off of the not so obvious bandwagon, is cards that care that you are in rank 4 and above. So say something that, it's not great during those early levels, but it rewards you for going long. And the longer the game goes, the more powerful it gets. But
what about a Druid's Chant that also had the tag?
1 to 3.
What about a Druid's Chant that had a tag that, like, tripled what it did in player level 4 and beyond?
Oh, wow.
That still wouldn't be playable, but,
Well,
That's
yeah.
so fun. Gain 100 life. Okay. Let's start over, guys.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
Karn liberated in Anywho, so
100 life must play in Arborist decks.
right. So, my thought is like there's a thread by DuBois who, if you don't know, was someone else who's in the Invitational. He recently posted on Reddit. He's a very big streamer, but the thread he posted on Reddit is being worried about player level 4. He's scared about how much a level 4 card is going to make the game even more luck based. And I gotta say, I have trust in those that worship Shiro. I mean, I have trust in Stone. Sorry.
Wow.
So, anywho, I have faith in them. I think that they're not going to mess it up. I can't imagine that they're going to go back and make all the old cards level 4. Like, why would you make Stonefist Giant level 4? Why do you need Zombie Infantry level 4? Why do you need Grove Hunters level 4? I don't see it happening. Especially, I don't see it happening with how much time in between the last set and this upcoming set. There's no way they have time to design a whole bunch of new cards to actually be set 2 and make all the old ones level 4. And if they just released cards that went up to level 4 in set 2, I'm pretty sure we'd all riot. I know I would. But, I mean, going beyond that, I think that we're probably going to see them become like Soulforge version of Planeswalkers. You're going to see like only a handful every set. You'll probably see every set maybe one in each faction. I think that would be doable, and they're just like really cool, splashy chase cards, or just they do really weird and unique things. Like maybe you'll have one that does something completely different at every level, so you put it in your deck and all the effects are very powerful, but they all do random things, so you can't ever bank on what it's going to be, and then it's just something really cool at level 4. Or maybe you have a card that just isn't good till player level 4, or maybe you have a card that like starts out really, really good and then like over time it decays, or like Ragin said, something that gets really, really good at level 3 and then dies off. In fact, there was someone talking about player level 4 Zymus. Like, you played Zymus and you got, the fact that he's undying and in play, and then level 4 was, like a pile of old bones because the magic had already been spent off on the Immortal Zymus. So, I think there's a lot of really interesting design space there, and I don't think that they're going to abuse it by using up as much as they can on a huge amount of cards. I think that they're going to stretch out that design space, and if you look at the forums, you have rank 1, 2, 3 followed by Mystic. I can't imagine something that's mystical is going to be thrown in abundance. Maybe that's just me, but again, I have a lot of faith in the Stoneblade guys. I think they'll get it right, and I don't think that I'm worried at all about the luck factor when it comes to level 4s.
I didn't even realize that people had thought that it was like the entire set of cards were going to include level 4. That just makes no sense to me from a design perspective.
What, Soulforge people not thinking the sky's falling? What'll happen next?
Point.
Yeah, well, I think I found our new motto. It's in Shiro we trust.
During the Invitational, I brought up Shiro on stream with Justin, and he was not very happy. I asked him when we were going to get a Shiro card, and he's like, Shiro doesn't need any more publicity.
The real reason why DuBois is scared of player level 4 is because he really doesn't want to have to dig back into his tracker to program it up to level 4.
Oh, that's true.
Ooh.
Very American of him.
All right, well, let's move on. There were a couple other things in the AMA to bring up. For one thing, he talked about the ability to craft or forge cards into silver, and the Kickstarter promos are coming around set 2. And with the forging for silver, there was a very, very, very small hint that might mean we have a single shot for silver, and that the silver you get from forging your cards can be applied however you want. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, there has been a very seemingly heated discussion on the forums about that. I think that forging into silver is actually, I like it as a general idea. I think it's going to be a very difficult and delicate balancing process because you have so many variables you have to think about. You have to think about the real-world cost of each card. You have to think about when you disenchant or if you deconstruct or whatever they're going to call it, you forge it to make it. But, I mean, it's so much to consider. Like, I like the idea that they're not creating a brand new currency. I like that they're using something that is already available to even their free-to-play players, because honestly, forging does seem like a very good alternative for the free-to-play players, because you can grind, especially now with the new online wins, and then you can use that and your patience, of course, to create the card that you've really been wanting. And that's something that free-to-play has not had previously. It's something that, I mean, obviously no one has had. It's that certainty. Now, you're obviously going to have to pay a premium for that certainty, for that guarantee. And that's the other difficulty. How do you price these things? But I think, no, I know there are going to be people who are going to be upset, because it's the old saying about, like, Magic cards. Wizards of the Coast could put a $50 bill in every Magic, the Gathering pack, and people would still complain. I think it's the same thing here. No matter what Stoneblade does,
it's true.
People will complain. But I think they have the best the best for the game is what they're going to do, and I have faith in that. And I think it's going to be difficult, but I do have that faith.
Can I just make a motion to call deconstructing your cards ratroning them? Wait, no, that'd be crashing and burning. We need something for deconstruct.
Oh, wow. Today is the Bash on Radron Day. Everybody, you're welcome to join the party.
Yeah. At least I didn't like publicly say that. Actually, it's too bad we didn't do this. We didn't do this like directly before the Invitational, so that I could say on stream that I was for sure going to win this, and then maybe I could have actually won it. That's the only thing.
That's what happened last time.
Yeah.
We're sorry, Radron, we didn't give you your good luck charm.
That's too bad.
So, crafting with silver.
Crafting with silver. I'm honestly very surprised that they are going that route. Once again, I don't know what is going to eventually be in the silver store. Are they actually going to have, like, what are we going to be able to buy? I mean, if we can buy anything with silver, then you know what? Fine. I mean, that does do weird things to what people, I guess, expect from a secondary market. Being able, like, if we were able to actually buy singles beyond, like, the card of the day and the alternate art card of the week, like, I don't know. I'm surprised that they're not going with that they didn't go with a X amount of commons can be made into a rare, X amount of rares can be made into a heroic, etc., etc. Like, I really expected that to be the way that it was going to be done. And if they have another way that they're going to do it and they're comfortable with it, I mean, that's fine. Obviously we need something to do with our extra cards, and even if it's exorbitantly expensive, it's still going to be used, because otherwise what else are you doing besides having them sit in your collection?
Right? I definitely agree.
It's just, regardless of what they do, it's going to be used, because what else are you going to do with your stuff?
Right.
Well, like, for me, like, I think that I am very surprised that this is the route they're going, but I think it's elegant, it's very simple, it's not going to take a lot of time to code, because silver already exists, cards already exist. All you have to do is decide legendaries turn into this, heroics turn into this, rares turn into this, commons turn into this. It's very, 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 very simple, which means they can spend a lot more time on the polish end of it and the testing end of that. Because last thing you want is to craft 10 legendaries into a legendary of choice. Not that I think that'll be the number, just throwing out arbitrary numbers, guys. But last thing you want is to have those 10 legendaries disappear and not get a card, or your game crashes and you don't know if you got the card, or maybe you craft three legendaries into a random one and you don't know what you got because your game crashed, and suddenly there's that customer service, and they'll have a lot more time to test that, and that won't happen. And what I got from the memo on the AMA was that it was very unlikely we would see cards, plural, in the store, and that more things would be available for silver. So I think that goes beyond the level of card of the day, and it's going to be either maybe you'll see everything available all at once, or maybe you'll see like 1/6 of the set, 1/8 of the set on like rotation, and that way you can't just buy everything at once. You have to make hard decisions based on what's beneficial to you now versus later, etc., etc. But I think it's a very elegant situation, and I like it. I like what it's going to do. I don't like adding an extra currency to the game. I don't want to do the X cards into Y. I don't want to do Hearthstone system. I think that the closer you put it to another game system, the easier it is going to be to compare it to that system and find disappointments because it's not some other system. For instance, I've heard people wanting to trade 4 legendaries into a specific legendary like Hearthstone does, but again, Hearthstone's a game that doesn't give you cards for free. You have to earn the cards that you get outside of leveling, and it's a game where you also are never going to be able to trade your cards. So, it's not fair to think that 4 legendaries in this game are going to be the same as 4 legendaries in Hearthstone. Everybody has their own opinion on that, but there's no way you can compare those two systems. And that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm not saying one number should be better over the other. I'm just saying that specifically when it comes to, crafting, it's not really a good idea to compare across games. So I like that they're doing their own thing. It prevents that because their game is very different in terms of how it gives cards than other games. What do you think, Fox?
Yeah, there's just one thing I want to keep in mind. You guys have covered most everything I want to. I think it's really simple. It's a good solution, but I don't think they've finalized it. Remember that, everything is subject to change up until release, and even then it's still subject to change somewhat. So, we have that caveat that, just because they said something now and they gave us some more information, they were nice enough to do that, doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly that way when it releases. So, don't get your mind set in stone that it's going to be this way, guaranteed, nothing will happen, nothing will be different. Leave yourselves open for change, and you'll find that there's a lot fewer opportunities to be disappointed with things.
But he said, and I'm quoting here, "Forging is the answer to all your problems, my friend." He called me friend. It must be true.
We're done here.
So moving on. Another really cool thing, or not cool, depending on who you are, this again another debated topic, is that between set 2 and 3, there will be small releases. I don't think this is so much of a discussion point, so much as I want to make people aware of it. There's going to be small releases between set 2 and 3. If it's like the one that we just got for set 1, that's great. We've seen 24 cards can switch up the meta. They've set up a card of the day system, so now I don't have to buy 20 more premium packs of set 2 to hope I get set 2.1 cards. So that my one criticism of the former system is more or less gone now. So I'm much more of a fan of it now than I was, and I definitely I personally, I made a post, a very angry post, back in the forum before set 1.1 drafting and tournament went live. I was very, very upset. I wanted them to release the card content, and I made a couple of points, probably less tactfully than I usually do, but simply put, I think I would like to see, 4 to 10 cards a month. Other people disagree with that. I would like to see regular content updates. They obviously aren't going to be able to keep the Magic schedule of 4 major expansions a year, but like 2 major expansions a year, and for each of those major expansions, 2 little expansions of 20 cards. I think that's totally doable, and that's something I'd like to see. I'd like to not have to wait more than 3 months for meta to shift. Having played card games for a long time, that worst part is that last 2 to 3 weeks before the next set comes out, where you're like starting to get really sick of Delver and Geist of St. Traft, and you just want to play against something else.
Anything else?
Anything else. So, this just a little bit of news there. Was there anything else from the AMA you wanted to mention, Fox?
I just wanted to mention that it looks like John said there is a big sale coming up soon and possibly some changes, so you guys want to keep your eyes open about that. You know, there's things coming in the pipeline regarding prices, whether it be temporary or permanent. I don't know, but keep your eyes open and your ears open. And hey, who knows? If you're smart, you might be able to get some really sweet deals.
Yeah. My personal opinion on that, and take it for what it's worth. I would save your money until this sale comes out, whatever it is. Just buy cards of the day for now, and then spend all of the money that you've ever had in your life, drain your bank account on SoulForge. It wants you to.
After you buy your set of Thundersaur.
Yeah, but buy your set of Thundersaur.
Did that already.
That was awesome.
By the time you
awesome.
hear this, it'll already be gone. But
I got my third one today.
Yeah, me too. I bought my third one, my second one, and my first one. So, you know.
I bought my second and third one.
Now I'm just missing a Zymus, and I have all the cards that I will ever want. I want to move on to what I am probably best known for now. For those who didn't know, when the patch went live, I streamed for 36 hours over 3 days, the new draft system, and then again for 24 hours the following weekend for 2 days.
Yeah, you're insane.
Draft is a huge thing for me. I don't stream it anymore. I get requests to. I might start again now that the Invitational is over. But I spend pretty much all of my time drafting with other people over Skype. For instance, Zan and I have done probably almost 20 drafts this week over Skype. So I'm still doing them, just not on my own account. I have no reason. I have all the cards, so I can get just as much fun playing with someone else. But
it's only been 15 for the record.
Okay, Mr. Spreadsheet. So
exactly.
What I'd like to move into is our pack, your pick. So the last time we did this, we didn't have the complete system in check. We didn't know for sure how everything's going to work. Now we do. So this is going to be still very similar to the old ones, but at least now, we're sure of what we're doing. We're sure of how this is going to go. And we've actually had time to play in the limited environment. Our first pack today, Zan, why don't you take your pick of one of these 6 cards? Explain your thoughts as well. But Frostwild Tracker, Scrapforge Titan, Seismic Adept, Unrelenting Dead, Fervent Assault, and Mr. Zarath, Dreadnought of Honor.
Alright, well this is a very interesting pack, because there are 2 cards that sort of leap off at me personally, but that's also because I've had a lot of success drafting these kinds of decks lately. And the first one that everyone that up until probably last week I would have said this is the pick all the time, because I really loved Aloyan in draft because they have such strong commons, is the Scrapforge Titan. It is a bomb. It is a great card. It's a great first pick. And especially if you take it as that first pick, you can probably, prioritize taking every Technosmith you see. You can start thinking, okay, I'm just going to try and stall, and then I'll have a Titan and I'll win. And that's a great way to start a draft. The other card that I really like is actually the Frostwild Tracker. And
what?
I like that. I do, because it puts me into Utera, and I have had success in Utera. And I know that everybody's like, what? Because Zrath is an incredible card as well. And taking Zrath puts you in, you can either play, Zombie, or you can play something Pump. But I really like Frostwild Tracker, because I love Utera. And it is the only Utera card in this pack, but it's also a great pick. Because, again, you know that you can either go into, like, a lane spam, or you can change it up, and you can go, like, I've been having success with Necrium Utera, and if you take the Utera early, you're guaranteeing your pump, or if you're taking, in this case, a Frostwild Tracker works really well with, like, Lifesaver Savants, which have been coming around a lot more recently, and I don't know why, because they're great, too. So the third card that I'm interested in, but I'm going to pass up, is, like I just said, the Zrath. I think he's stronger than the Unrelenting Dead if I want to take a Necrium card, because I like the way he levels a little bit better. I like that he's an upfront threat. And even though his regen is lower, I like that he's not Dreadboltable. I like that he's out of range of a lot of creatures. They have to expend a 6-power creature at level 1 to deal with him. And that's, even though you have your rule of 6 going, if you've been listening to this, and to Kit Draft, I feel like Zrath is just late game, the fact that he doesn't hit the magic number on he only has the 14 attack is actually a detriment there, despite his regen. So I think it's between Frostwild Tracker or Scrapforge Titan for me, and because I love Utera, I take the Tracker.
What do you think, Rajan? What are your thoughts?
That's all actually like really good. I mean, the Titan does jump out at me, and let's be clear here. I'm still honestly not very good at draft. Like I can draft what I look at, and I'm like, this is actually a really good deck, and then I will still only go 2-1 because of, you know, I have like both my really good bombs leveled, and I'm just kind of waiting for them, but you know the variance happens, and you just don't see them, and you're trying to stay in, and it just doesn't happen, and you lose the one game, and then very easily win your next 2 games. I don't know. So I don't think that I'm actually terribly good at draft.
Can we get that edited out and like replaced with Soulforge instead of the word draft?
We'll see what we can do.
Keep going, Rajan.
Wow. You guys suck.
I love you, Adrian.
So,
Adrian level 4. Name of this podcast.
Oh, yes. That was a good game. So I would end up taking the Scrapforge Titan. I love Aloyan. I love armor. All their, like, you just have access to so many good creatures. If I was going to go for my second pick, I actually would take the Zrath and try to be more aggressive than I usually do, because as my friend MN Paladin, who's been playing NT removal in the queues recently, 5/6s are the devil. Like, they are Satan. How you can't kill them in player level 1 in constructed, and in draft there's still a lot of, I mean, people are trying to prioritize like these 6 power cards, so it's a lot easier to get rid of. But when you take Wrath, you go right, like the very first opportunity you get, you go straight into Atera, and then you try to get some pump spells, maybe try to get some 6/5 zombies. Like, there's a lot of there's so much synergy there. And he's not bad, especially if you're trying to actually win in the early game. But honestly, I'd take the Scrapforge Titan because, oh my gosh, 2020 armor 10. Come on. Let's do this.
Alright, so you've heard what a bad player would take. Let's go back to a good player. Fox, what do you think?
Well, thank you, Kit. Well, I'm going to first off discuss Scrapforge Titan in this pack. I personally would not take the Scrapforge Titan, but that's because the amount of salt that's been building up in locales where I've drafted the Scrapforge Titan from my tiers has been getting a little bit too high, and I think I might need to cut down on my sodium. But Scrapforge Titan is one of those cards that I want to love. I really want to love it in draft, but I've drafted it like 15 to 20 times, and I've only ever drawn the level 3 twice. Whereas my opponents always get it on turn 9. I don't know.
Every time.
I think it's just
every
me.
time.
I think it's just me. But that said, it's still a very strong card. You know, it's a card that lends itself to you wanting to go long in draft. So, I mean, you might actually prioritize cards like Glowstride Stag when you take that, you know, getting 1 or 2 because they help stall the game out until you could draw that bomb and stabilize. But I think there's a few other interesting picks here. Zrath is definitely a consideration. You know, he's very strong in and of himself. He has some minor synergy with things like Blightwalker, Fellwalker, Zombie Infantry. You know, just some fairly solid picks you can find in draft. But, you know, he's been moving down on my list of first pick heroics because he requires synergy to get the most out of him. Seismic Adept is actually a very strong card, and I'm seriously considering it here, just because I've seen that card wreck so many people. It's wrecked me a few times as well. Just the ability to completely destroy your opponent's positioning at any point in the game is a very strong ability. Fervent Assault for similar reasons, and Unrelenting Dead I probably would not take over Zerath since Zerath is in the pack. My pick, though, is Frostwild Tracker, because being able to get multiple bodies on the board that are relevant, especially since you're drafting lots of, you know, low depreciation creatures like Swamp Moss Lurker, you know, Vault Technicians, Storm Callers, you know, even Marrow Fiends. being able to play one of those 8-power creatures off for free off of a 7/4 is just awesome. So I definitely take the Frostwild Tracker.
So, for me, how I evaluate my first pick is this. I prefer cards that are strong at every level, or cards that are so drastically good after their bad level, or so drastically good before their bad level that it makes up for it. Cards that can win you the game on their own, and cards that are good from behind and ahead. So when I evaluate my cards, I generally look at those qualities, and whatever the strongest one for my first pick, that's what I take. Specifically, I favor bombs for my first pick because that lets me draft good cards. I mean, I would much rather draft, Ionic War Charger over Forge Guardian Beta. A card that's good at every level versus the card that's just good at level 3. So if I get the chance at snagging, a really good bomb at level 1, I'm going to take it, in pack 1, I'm going to take it almost no matter what. So looking at this, I think that the first thing I want to say about this pack is that all the cards here are cards that I would be not unhappy to have in my deck. They're cards that I would not be unhappy to have as a first pick, even. None of these are cards that you want to pick up later. For instance, let's see, Static Shock is a card that you'd much rather see later rather than earlier. Battletech is a card you want to see early rather than later. They all have different values, and you want to see if your deck's going to fit with some of them. Some cards are build-aroundable, such as Fervent Assault really wants you to pick up movement creatures. Scrapforged Titan really wants you to pick up leveling creatures. Usually I would much rather pick up Scrapforged Titan late, simply because I want to make sure my deck can support it. Going to talk about that first, because everybody else focused on it. My problem with Scrapforged Titan is the level 2 does not make up for the level 1. If you play the level 2 in level 2, it is not usually a strong play. It is an average play. Sometimes it is a good play. It's not a strong play. So you have a garbage level 1 that you don't want to play against Charnel Titan, you don't want to play against Predator, you don't want to play against Gloom Reaper Witch, you don't want to play against a whole bunch of different cards. It is strictly just not pressure, and it is rarely good unless you can trade it for a card that, managed to live with 1 health. Like, that's the only time it's ever favorable for you over another card. The level 2 does not make up for that. It's like, similarly to playing a Krogius, level 1 and level 2, and 2 does not make up for the level 1. So, I don't like that card, but also the other thing I don't like about the card is if you don't draw it on every player level, like you have a 66% chance of seeing the card in player level 1, you have a 66% chance of seeing it in player level 2, you have a 66% chance of playing it in level 3. Those odds, I don't like them. The chances of you getting to level it each time in those player levels, you have to have a good enough board to do it. You have to draw it. Usually, you have to be ahead or have a Technosmith to go with it. It's just too much playing the odds for not enough return. It can work. I'm happy to have a Scrapforged Titan, just never as my first pick. That said, I like Unrelenting Dead. Zerath is just better, from my opinion. Unrelenting Dead has to be played with Utera to be truly effective, similar to Orion Battle Droid. So I don't like the fact that my Pack 2 has to be a Necrium card or sometimes a Soothing Radiance in order to secure that. So I would take the Zerath over that. If I had to pick between Seismic Assault and Seismic Adept and Fervent Assault, I would take Fervent Assault simply because it's removal and a win condition rolled into one. It's also proactive. If you've watched my stream, you know that I love Frostwild Tracker. That said, Frostwild Tracker is not a bomb, and it's a bad level 1, so I value Zerath above it, and I'm taking Zerath here and going in for the strong card. Maybe I'll pick up Utera with it, but even then, like, if I take Zerath and I can't get Utera, what I'll do is I'll heavily draft Dark Shapers and Zombie Infantry and just the high health zombies and go that as well. That said, Fox, you said you want to make another comment?
Yeah, I just had a really quick comment. I actually had a draft a couple days ago that had 2 Titans, and despite having 2 Titans and doing my very best to level them every time I saw them, I only drew the level 3 once, and it was in rank 4. And I was nearly dead, and it barely managed to stabilize the game for me. Barely.
I was trying to do some mental math on the likelihood of seeing a level 3 in a player level for Scrapforged Titan, and my math is fuzzy, but if I remember correctly, you're only going to see it 1 out of every 4 games, roughly. 1 out of every 4 games you will see that level 3 Scrapforged Titan on level 3. So
is my math is fuzzy code for you should stop listening?
Well,
alright, we need to get some ice.
It's like, if I remember correctly, it's like you have like an 8 out of 27% chance, or 8 out of 27 ratio to get it on level 3, considering a 2/3 of the time, two out of every 3 times you're going to see it in a player level. You multiply all that together, you get 8 out of 27, which is somewhere between 1/3 and 1/4 of the time. So it's like 1 out of every 4 games you're going to see the level 3 during player level 3.
Well, Radron, since we're on the subject of Titan, why don't you tell us what your second pick would be out of Ghastly Touch, Nargath Bruiser, Lightning Brand, Disintegrate, and Fangwood Ravager?
This is great because I don't get to go into Tempe's much, but I love Nargath Bruiser. I mean, the card is.
I was going to say Disintegrate.
No.
Well, you did play it in that first tournament.
Yeah, you did.
Hey, and it even won me a game. I shouldn't have been playing it, but it did win me a game, so shut up. Yeah, Bruiser's awesome. Yeah, I'd have to take it.
Radron's at a loss for words.
I definitely enjoy a Bruiser. I think that if you're taking the best card in the pack, I definitely think Bruiser has the strongest upside out of all those cards, anyways. So I agree. That said, for people who didn't get to see the Tempe's pack, maybe you picked Unrelenting Dead or Seismic Adept. Your cards to choose from.
Or Seismic Adept, and Unrelenting Dead is Nikrium.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Catching these errors.
To see it, Aetherhounds, Feral Instinct, Vengeful Spirit, Gloom Reaper Witch, and Technosmith. Seems like you had at least decent picks there, not garbage. I can definitely see cards that I would have wanted to pick. But for Zan and Fox thereafter, your second picks would be Gravegast, Spirit Flame Mystic, which is an upgrade, Sparkbot, Steel Shaper Savant, and a Force Field.
This is actually, man, this is going to be a rough pick. So my first choice is Utera, which I know pairs pretty well with a couple things. I really enjoy pairing Utera with Nekrium, so the Gravegast is very interesting to me. I've had hit and miss with Aloyan Utera, and the 3 cards here in Aloyan, I'm not really... A Steel Shaper Savant is, weak Savant. Even though it's still good in draft if you're heavy Aloyan, I don't know that I want to force myself to be heavy Aloyan. So I'm actually considering... I'm wondering, have I ever in my life drafted a Spirit Flame Mystic? And I don't think the answer to that question is yes. And this is after, 50 drafts. I don't think I've ever drafted a Spirit Flame Mystic. I might be tempted just to try a Utera Tempest deck, but I don't think it's going to be today. I think instead today I'm going to go with my Frostwild Tracker, a Gravegast, and go into Nekrium Utera. Because that way, Nekrium Utera allows me... I've already got a Frostwild, so I can start spamming some creatures out. But it also allows me, if I get lucky, to, get some pump. Gravegast makes for a good creature to pump, especially if you can get past its weakish level 1. His level 2 is pretty strong, and his level 3 is criminally underplayed because he's got so much regen and he's got a decent body already. And if you even just throw a level 1 Enrage on a level 3 Gravegast, you've got a real threat that is very hard to remove. So I'm going to take the Gravegast and go into my Nekrium Utera and be extremely happy about it.
What do you take, Fox? You agree?
Actually, in this case, I don't think I would agree. I'd rather take Gravegast to after I've already had some pump spells, maybe an Enrage and a Strength in Numbers, or a Life Shaper Savant. cards that I already want to have the ability to pump that before I take it. That said, Utera Necrim is still a powerful faction combination, but the faction combination I've had the most success with recently has been Utera Aloyan. And so, I haven't drafted a Spirit Flame Mystic either, despite wanting to live the dream of soul harvesting it. Or even just corpse crawlering it and getting the free board wipe. But Sparkbot or Steel Shaper Savant are, it's a legitimate consideration for me, and I think I'd probably take the Steel Shaper, simply because, I'm not going to force myself to go mono Aloyan, but sometimes my drafts do end up heavier in Aloyan than they are in Utera. And so, sometimes this card has upside, and, there are the occasional times where, I decide I want to get a little bit gimmicky, get a couple jetpacks, 3 or 4 Forge Guardian Alphas, and just assemble my own Scrap Forge Titan with a much better level 1 and 2. And that happens sometimes, and I've actually made it happen. I've had a flying 26/26 with armor 10. It's pretty hilarious. It's pretty hard to deal with, guys, let me tell you that. But, I think I'd probably pick up the Steel Shaper. He trades decently well at most levels. So, he's not a bad body. He's not a great body either. But, sometimes you do get that extra value out of the effect, and, you're just able to do some disgusting things. So I'll take the Steel Shaper Savant here.
Alright, so I picked Zerath, bringing me in a Necreum. My choices are Force Field, Ionic War Charger, Nargath Bruiser, Graveghast, and Spring Dryad. Speaking of which, I want to point out, if you haven't looked on Forge Post, you can see the alternate art for both Ionic War Charger and Spring Dryad on there. They both look really, really, really sweet, and Ionic War Charger now looks like a robot unicorn. I want to ride one. That said, I think that if I didn't know what my first pick was, say this was, random first pick that I wasn't happy with, and this was just my second pack and I had to pick a card, I would pick Ionic War Charger, just because it's a card that's strong at all levels. It's a card that is incredibly good at deflecting pressure in the early game, while still maintaining really, really strong relevance in the late game. It's a very good defensive and offensive card. So that is my first pick in a vacuum. Given that I picked Zerath, Utera is the best faction to pair with Zerath. Utera is also the best faction to pair with Necreum in general, because they have a high amount of synergy. And Spring Dryad works really well when you can pair it with Necreum, because, again, all the redundant creatures. So I'm very, very, very happy to go Zerath and Spring Dryad. One of the things that I find is weak in Necreum is that Necreum has very few game enders, has a huge amount of synergy, but very few game enders. So I love Necreum when I can get some game enders, and the fact that I have a Spring Dryad and a Zerath make me very, 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 very happy to be Necreum Utera. So I think that's a great start, and I would definitely pick that over the other options.
I just have one question for you, Kit. You said that you would take Ionic War Charger in a vacuum, but what would you take in a broom?
Oh my god!
I feel like Kit is dying over here.
That
just
was
snoring.
trash. No, that was trash. That goes straight to the dustbin.
Well,
Ouch.
trash is what he
All
picks
right,
up with the vacuum or the broom.
So guys, this has been another great episode of Player Level 4. I'm very sorry for the corny and bad jokes brought by my counterparts, and I hope you enjoyed my conspiracy theory. Soulforge promotes anorexia. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for listening. Radrin isn't that bad. Okay, maybe he is, but, we'll give him credit, make him feel a little better. Thank you, Zan, for coming on again, and we'll see you next time on Player Level 4.
Yeah, remember that in Shira we trust. Say bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.